Five Nights at Freddy's is a series that at this point needs no introduction. If you clicked on this video, it means you want to see someone ramble on about the tragically inconsistent lore of this franchise using evidence from the 19 video games, plethora of books, and feature-length movie. Well, here you go. Just a quick disclaimer, a large portion of this video is obviously made up of theories and speculation. Just know I'm not claiming to have solved FNaF or anything, and if you disagree with my timeline, that's totally fine. Make your own video. Let's begin. In the year 1970, two friends named Henry Emily and William Afton drummed up their own business that they called Fazbear Entertainment. At the time, it was a small entertainment company that built props and mascot costumes for carnivals. Henry and William's business saw limited success until the two met Edwin Murray, a well-known engineer and costume designer who owned a warehouse called Murray's Costume Manor. Edwin agreed to help William and Henry in their business and became a contractor of theirs. Now, in order to set Fazbear Entertainment apart from competitors, William and Henry designed their very own cast of characters to promote their brand. Taking inspiration from Fredbear's singing show from the 1930s, they created a yellow bear named Fredbear and a yellow rabbit named Spring Bonnie. Later that same year, Fazbear Entertainment was hired by an unknown company to make costume characters for a carnival simply known as the Fall Fest. William, Henry, and Edwin built several mascot suits for the attraction, including costumes of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. The Fall Fest went great, and Fredbear and Spring Bonnie became quite popular with young children. Over the following years, Fazbear Entertainment expanded, hiring new employees and eventually growing large enough for Henry and William to open their very own family restaurant that they called Fredbear's Family Diner, which opened to the public in 1979. Fredbear's became extremely popular, so William and Henry decided to capitalize, preparing to open another pizzeria to go with Fredbear's. But none of the other characters from the Fall Fest were as successful as Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, enough to warrant their own location. So Henry and William had to make new ones. They designed 4 brand new characters to accompany Fredbear and Spring Bonnie and help in marketing. These characters included Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy. Quickly, work began on converting these 4 into animatronic robots and mascot suits. With the new workload, Edwin was unable to spend enough time with his son David. So, using scraps from around his warehouse, he built an animatronic for his son to play with that he called the Mimic. It was a simple endoskeleton that was designed to copy whatever David did. Quickly, David grew attached to the Mimic and played with it as his father worked on building animatronics for Fazbear. Over time, Edwin noticed the Mimic was seemingly becoming more alive, its once robotic movements becoming more lifelike. But one unfortunate day, David was playing outside the warehouse, chased his ball into the road, and was hit by a passing van. David's death left Edwin distraught. He stopped work on everything that he was building for Fazbear, and after seeing the Mimic continue to copy the things David used to do, he lashed out at it, beating it with a metal pole. The Mimic, following its simple programming, adapted to the anger and violence inflicted on it, becoming angry and violent itself. When a team of Fazbear employees was sent to the warehouse to pick up the things Edwin was building, Edwin himself had disappeared. The Mimic, now on a vicious rampage, brutally killed all the employees, stuffing the bodies wherever they could fit. Shortly after, another employee, just a single one this time, was sent to the warehouse. He managed to find, capture, and deactivate the Mimic, bringing it to the higher-ups of Fazbear Entertainment. Now that Fazbear had the Mimic, Henry began building his own animatronics, using it to better understand robotics. William, however, didn't pick up on it quite as easily, so he decided to take up the business side of their upcoming establishment, primarily dealing with money. In order to save money and not have to maintain both animatronics and mascot suits, Henry fused the two, creating a device that he called a spring-lock suit. An animatronic robot that could be turned into a wearable suit by winding small spring-loaded mechanisms that hold the endoskeleton parts to the side so a person can safely fit in. To William and Henry's surprise, the 4 new characters, Freddy, Bunny, Chica, and Foxy, quickly became much more popular than Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. So Fazbear Entertainment wasted no time in giving them a home in the form of a sister location to Fredbear's simply known as Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Something very important to mention is that William and Henry both had families of their own. Henry, a wife and daughter, and William, a wife and 3 kids. However, while Henry loved and cared for his family, William more so saw his wife and children as accessories. He was a man who only took pride in himself and his own accomplishments, and saw having a family as necessary for a good public image. Because of this, he tended to be neglectful and dismissive to his children. Due to spending so much time at work and not being able to watch his daughter Charlie, Henry decided to build a new animatronic to watch Charlie for him. He created the security puppet, a highly advanced security robot designed to watch Charlie from inside its box at all times and prevent her from leaving the building without her father. Around this time, the annual Fall Fest was starting back up again. Henry and William once again lent their old mascot suits for the Fall Fest to use and used their characters to help promote it. But for this particular Fall Fest, Henry and William decided to lend the mimic to the carnival, the robot being dressed as a clown from when it had been captured and deactivated in Edwin's warehouse. The Fall Fest went well until seemingly out of nowhere, the whole carnival burned to the ground. Nearly everything Henry and William built for the festival was destroyed, with very little being recovered. This was the last Fall Fest that Henry and William lent their supplies to. After this disaster, Henry took the mimic's programming, which was stored on a simple computer hard drive chip, and stored it away, while the physical body of the mimic was stripped of its costume, tossed in the back room of Fredbear's, and forgotten about. A few months later, on an average day in Fredbear's family diner, William was casually helping an employee into the Fredbear Springlock suit. This seemingly inconspicuous event happened to be witnessed from behind a cracked door by William's youngest son, Evan Afton. Being so young, Evan was confused and afraid by what he was seeing. It instilled a fear into him and shook him to his core, because what is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. William's eldest son, Michael, knew about what had happened with his younger brother and decided to take advantage of this new fear and pull a series of pranks on Evan. He'd follow his brother around, hiding under his bed, behind the TV, or any other place he could think, and when Evan passed by, he'd jump out and scare him while wearing a foxy mask. William, not being at home enough to stop Michael's bullying himself, set up cameras all around the neighborhood to monitor Evan and hid a walkie-talkie inside the Fredbear plush that he carried with him wherever he went. It wasn't long before the other neighborhood kids found out about Evan's newfound fear, and just like Michael, they began to bully him. All the while, William spoke to his son through the Fredbear plush, trying to comfort him and make sure he stayed where the cameras could see him. All this culminated during Evan's birthday, which he unfortunately found himself celebrating at Fredbear's family diner. Michael and his friends carried Evan over to the Fredbear animatronic and forced his head inside its mouth. Evan immediately started to panic, and his frantic movements caused the mechanisms to malfunction. Fredbear's jaw slammed shut, crushing Evan's head. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was no use. After just a few nights, William was allowed to take Evan home, where the boy breathed his last. Immediately after Evan's death, Fredbear's family diner was closed, while Fredbear and Spring Bonnie were essentially scrubbed from existence. The Fredbear and Friends cartoon became Freddy and Friends, and the Springlock suits were stored away in the back room of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. William buried his son's body in the woods. No grave, no flowers, just a pile of dirt deep in the forest where no one could find it. He then spent most of the subsequent nights at the bar, brimming with emotions. He was incredibly upset that his son had died, but not exactly for the right reasons. His image of a perfect family had been ruined by his son's death. He was annoyed. He was embarrassed. As he spent more time at the bar, he began to think about Henry. How Henry still had a perfect family, while his was now broken. And what was to blame for that? Henry's Springlock suit. William decided he would settle the score with his best friend. Drunk and enraged, William drove to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with the intent of giving Henry a piece of his mind. But when he pulled around back, he happened upon Henry's daughter, Charlie. She was outside, alone in the rain. A group of bullies had managed to trap the security puppet in its box and were now laughing at her through the window. This was even better than just telling Henry off. A drunken William seized his chance. If he couldn't have the perfect family, then neither could Henry. He cornered Charlie behind the building and killed her with his bare hands. He then hid her body in a pile of trash and drove away into the night. After William left and the group of bullies dispersed, the puppet managed to break out of its box and immediately went searching for Charlie. It found her outside, throwing its heavy, malfunctioning body over top of her before giving into the rain and short-circuiting. After just a few seconds of Charlie and the puppet laying lifeless next to one another, Charlie rose from the ground, but now she saw from the security puppet's eyes. At the exact moment the animatronic threw its body over hers, her soul possessed it, bringing it to life. When William returned home, he found that Michael had escaped from the house by breaking his bedroom window and ran off to the spot where Evan was buried, his footprints digging into the earth below. The boy was racked with guilt, having violent nightmares and complaining about hearing his brother's voice whispering to him at night. In the following days at Freddy's, William quickly noticed that the puppet was acting differently. It was cautious around him, on edge every time he was nearby. This got him thinking. He'd heard about what happened with the puppet the night he killed Charlie, and now the animatronic was acting much different, and it looked different too, with purple tears on its face that weren't there before. Was Charlie in there? William was confused and intrigued by the puppet's new behavior. Henry, on the other hand, was distraught. Because the murder was committed outside the building, Fazbear Entertainment was able to keep Freddy's open, but Henry no longer helped maintain the building nor the animatronics, and fell deep into despair, having no idea that it was William who killed his daughter. William was thinking about the puppet more and more every day. He was surely confused, but there was something more important on his mind. He knew that he couldn't let a repeat of Evan happen. Neither of his remaining children could be killed by an animatronic, and he knew just how to prevent that from happening. First, he had a small bunker secretly built underneath his house. From down there, he could monitor Michael and Elizabeth while also being able to work privately. The bunker started small, but over time, William had it expanded. He then began to build his own animatronics. They were more rudimentary than Henry's, but they would work for what William was trying to do. He began experimenting with illusions, eventually developing a special type of gas that had the ability to alter a person's vision. With this gas, he could make sure Michael stayed away from the animatronics. Filtering the gas from his bunker up into Michael's bedroom, William caused his son to see the animatronics he'd built as horrible monsters. He could make them appear organic, putrid, and lifelike. A terrified Michael had no choice but to defend himself from these nightmares that roamed the halls at night. The robots were harmless, but they were enough to keep Michael even more terrified than he already was. The illusions were successful, instilling a deep fear of animatronics into Michael. The boy was already traumatized by what he'd done to his brother, and being continuously attacked by terrifying monsters every night only amplified his fear. William convinced Michael that the nights he'd suffer through were just dreams, and reminded him that tomorrow was another day. Now that Michael was taken care of, William could focus on putting his suspicions to rest. The puppet was different, and he was almost certain that it was somehow because of Charlie. But was it even possible for a human soul to tether itself to an inanimate object? He had to see for himself. He began working on a special project that was sure to figure all this out. Quickly becoming much more adept at engineering and robotics, William built a device that he called the Scooper, a large metal arm designed to efficiently dismantle animatronics by shooting forward and ripping out the endoskeleton. He used the Scooper sparingly, but it was the first step in the larger plan he was working toward. In 1985, after laying low for a while, William revealed the opening of his very own pizzeria, Circus Baby's Pizza World, a restaurant that starred 4 extremely advanced robots called the Funtime animatronics.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream.
But unbeknownst to everyone except William, these 4 animatronics were built for the sole purpose of kidnapping children. Outfitted with storage tanks in their stomachs and the ability to mimic voices and count how many kids are in the room at a time. With these 4 animatronics, William could lure children into being captured by them, and then bring the kids down to his bunker where he could experiment on them. Because of the dangerous nature of the robots, William ordered his daughter Elizabeth not to go near them. But she disobeyed, getting too close to the circus baby animatronic, which suddenly used a giant claw from its stomach to grab and trap her inside. The crushing impact of the claw killed Elizabeth immediately, and soon after William found out what happened to her. He faked a gas leak to get everyone out, and the restaurant closed on its opening day. Soon after, William removed Elizabeth's body from Baby and had all 4 Funtime animatronics moved down to his bunker. While relocating them, William noticed something strange about Circus Baby. He had built the robot with blue eyes, but now they were green, the same color as Elizabeth's eyes. Surely this meant she lived on inside the animatronic. But still, this wasn't good enough proof for William. He had to know without a doubt. After a few weeks, William decided that it was time to take matters into his own hands. He'd do a little experimenting himself. Besides, in his mind, he hadn't gotten back at Henry enough just yet. Bent on ruining his former friend's business and reputation, he went to Freddy's, dug up the abandoned Spring Bonnie suit, and used it to earn the trust of a little girl named Susie, who he lured away to the back room and killed, hiding her body inside the Chica animatronic. He then lured away 3 little boys, Gabriel, Jeremy, and Fritz, who he stuffed inside of Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy, respectively. The 4 murders had been calculated and premeditated, until Cassidy. Unlike the others, she put up a fight. She wasn't going quietly, so William shoved her into the abandoned Fredbear suit and tripped the spring locks. Cassidy died slowly and painfully. This whole case was labeled the Missing Children's Incident. William got off scot-free once again due to his face being hidden by the Bonnie suit on the security camera footage, and because he hid the bodies where no one would ever think to check, the police never found them. But Henry saw his daughter in these disappearances. He knew that it had to have been William who killed Charlie and the 5 children, so he kicked his old best friend out of the business and closed down Freddy Fazbear's Pizza for good shortly after. The 5 robots sat abandoned until Charlie took action. The spirits of the children were wandering the building, confused, some even unaware that they were dead, until they were found by Charlie. She guided each of them to possess one of the animatronics just as she did, promising that this would help them take their revenge on the yellow rabbit who killed them. So each of the spirits possessed the animatronic their body was stuffed into. Gabriel's soul went into Freddy, Susie into Chica, Fritz into Foxy, and Jeremy into Bonnie. The animatronics came to life, being powered by the angry spirits now inside them. With Cassidy, however, she ended up having to share a body, because the Fredbear suit happened to already be possessed by Evan, William's son, whose skull had been crushed by the same animatronic 2 years prior. Evan's spirit was still confused and afraid, remembering nothing about his life except for one thing. His brother had killed him, and he wanted revenge. Despite the failure of Circus Baby's Pizza World, William wasn't giving up on his Funtime animatronics that easily. He'd just gotten sloppy before and allowed his daughter to mess the whole thing up. Expanding the bunker, he drummed up Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, a business in which families could rent out one of the Funtime animatronics for birthday parties. The system was rather simple. One of the animatronics would be sent out for a party, and if it was lucky, it would be able to lure and capture a child. Then it would be brought back to the bunker, where William could dismantle the animatronic with the scooper, getting rid of the evidence, and run his experiments on the child. While William was busy with the whole child trap thing, Fazbear Entertainment was preparing to reopen Freddy's. Henry, having stepped down from being the head of the company, was put in charge of building the animatronics for the grand reopening. And he knew that he couldn't let what happened at the last Freddy's happen again at this one. He and the company's engineers built what Fazbear Entertainment dubbed the toy animatronics. 4 advanced robots built with facial recognition software tied into a criminal database that allows them to detect predators in order to prevent another incident from happening. They also took the old animatronics and stored them away in the back room, along with refurbishing the security puppet for use in the pizzeria. William, seeing the ads for the grand reopening, became very angry with the idea of Freddy's being brought back. So he applied for a job at the place as a daytime security guard using the fake name Dave Miller.
What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used
During his shift, he snuck into the back room and once again dug up the old Spring Bonnie suit. He then used it to lure away and kill 5 more kids. Only this time, he elected not to hide their bodies, instead leaving them out for everyone to find the next day. This crime wasn't for the sake of experiments or testing his theories. He committed this crime out of pure hate for Henry and Fazbear Entertainment. That night, William stayed after his shift and roamed the building, placing the bodies. While he was doing this, Charlie and Gabriel were also up and about, trying to find and help the new victims. William attacked Gabriel, but was supposedly overpowered by the 2 animatronics before managing to escape. The next day, the kids' dead bodies were found, but Fazbear Entertainment decided to carry on with the birthday party scheduled for that week before they'd have to close the place down. At this final party, the security guard working the day shift after William left was attacked by one of the toy animatronics. The robot bit him on the head, damaging his frontal lobe. This is what became the infamous Bite of 87. After the disastrous and tragic failure of this pizzeria, Fazbear Entertainment decided to give one last crack at it just a few years later in 1993. They returned to the abandoned building that held the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and refurbished the original animatronics to be used for entertainment, along with storing Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, and the puppet in the back. But Henry had had enough. He quit his job as an animatronic technician and, like Edwin Murray before him, disappeared. This time around, rather than William, it was Michael Afton, now an adult, who took a job at Freddy's using the fake name Mike Schmidt so he wouldn't be turned away due to his family name. Quickly, Michael also grew suspicious of the animatronics. From what he'd seen, it didn't seem that they were just robots. There was something about them that was alive. Due to the strong resemblance that Michael bore to his father, the children mistook him for William. Thinking they'd finally come face to face with their killer again, they acted with relentless hostility, ruthlessly trying to break into Michael's office and kill him night after night. Charlie was also present, watching over the spirits as they pursued Michael, but choosing not to get involved herself. She and Evan were the only spirits who knew that Michael wasn't William. Speaking of Evan, Michael was able to communicate with him through the logbook, but the spirit was angry and wanted revenge for what had been done to him. He, alongside Cassidy, who he shared the same body with, would follow Michael even after he left Freddy's, torturing him with nightmares and hallucinations. On his 4th night working at Freddy's, Michael found out through the instructional recordings that Ralph, the previous security guard, had been killed by the animatronics. The next day, he checked inside the empty suits in the back room, finding Ralph's corpse before swiftly being fired for tampering with the animatronics. Shortly after Michael was fired, William took his chance. He snuck into the abandoned Freddy's and hid inside the back room where the spring-lock suits were being stored, waiting for the animatronics to begin roaming the building. When one of them would pass by, William jumped out and dismantled them. He took the 4 endoskeletons down to his bunker and melted them down into a furnace, reducing them to fluid. He then took this fluid and injected it into the Funtime animatronics using the scooper, and sure enough, it brought the robots to life. He'd finally done it. He'd proven that a soul could attach itself to a non-living object and live on after death. He became fascinated with this new breakthrough and wanted to find out more as soon as possible. Injecting the endoskeletons into the Funtime animatronics imbued them with the memories of the children. William returned to Freddy's presumably the next night, hoping to find more things to melt down. But he quickly found himself cornered by the angry ghosts of Cassidy, Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, and Fritz. The spirits chased him into the safe room, leaving him with no way to escape. In a panic, William noticed the abandoned Spring Bonnie suit sitting in the corner. He quickly put it on, hoping to intimidate the spirits with the suit they'd been killed by. But after a few seconds, the unstable spring locks malfunctioned, crushing William's body and locking it inside. He collapsed as the spirits watched happily before fading away. And with no other immediately available vessels, they possessed the Funtime animatronics. The next day, the daytime security guard showed up for his shift, finding that the animatronics had been dismantled, and there was a still conscious man stuck inside the springlock suit. He alerted Fazbear Entertainment, who quickly ordered the safe room to be sealed, trapping William's spring-locked body behind a brick wall. After a few weeks of William having gone missing, Michael began to wonder where he'd gone. Ever since he was young, his father had ingrained into his mind that if he should ever disappear, to go into his office and open the door hidden in the wall that only he and Michael knew about.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be.
Mike did just this, and the hidden door opened to an elevator that he rode down underneath the house, finding the bunker that his father had kept a secret from him all these years. Quickly, he found Circus Baby and the Funtime animatronics. As he made his way through the bunker, cluelessly performing maintenance checks on the robots and resetting the power cables, he grew suspicious of the Funtime animatronics just as he had with the ones at Freddy's. Just like those ones, these robots seemed alive. They could think and speak just like humans. Searching deeper into the bunker, Michael found his father's hallucinogenic gas tanks. Horrified, he was confronted with the truth, that the nightmares he had as a child were real the whole time. His father had been lying to him for years, but that somehow wasn't the worst of it. Finding the blueprints for the Funtime animatronics, Michael learned all about their interesting design choices. His father was building animatronics specifically designed to lure and murder children. Michael was confused, angry, and afraid. All this time, William had been the one who'd made those 5 children go missing, the one who killed Charlie Emily, and it was his animatronic that killed Elizabeth. To Michael, it all made sense now. The spirits of the children who'd gone missing, and even his sister, were trapped inside these animatronics, haunting the bunker. If these animatronics really housed 5 tortured souls, Michael decided that it was up to him to help them. Elizabeth's voice guided him, asking him to use the scooper to dismantle her animatronic body to set her soul free. Michael followed Elizabeth's instructions, dismantling Circus Baby and leaving her with the remains of the other Funtimes, who had already been dismantled by the rental service's employees. Thinking that he'd allowed his sister and the children's spirits to pass on, Michael left the bunker. But a short while later, the 4 Funtime animatronics combined their endoskeletons together into one, forming a massive amalgamation of endoskeleton parts and wires. It gets confusing, but it's basically 5 spirits all possessing one huge animatronic. The amalgamation dragged Michael back down to the bunker and used the scooper to violently rip out his bones and organs, climbing inside the hollowed corpse and wearing it as a costume to finally escape the bunker. Elizabeth and the 4 children posed as Michael over the course of a week or so as the body began to rot and decompose, his hair falling out and his skin turning ragged and changing purple. Eventually, the spirits decided to give up on the body, vomiting themselves out through Michael's mouth and crawling into the sewer. Michael keeled over and died, but after just a few moments, he got back to his feet. The fluid injected into him by the scooper coursed through his body and was able to resurrect him even without any organs. At that moment, he knew it was up to him to find his father and burn Fazbear Entertainment to the ground. And before the 30-year time skip, here's a reminder as to where everyone currently is. William is sealed inside the back room, trapped in a spring-lock suit. Michael, after being scooped, is trying to track down William. Charlie and Evan are still at Freddy's, just kind of confused about where their friends have gone. And Elizabeth and the missing children are hiding in the sewers after leaving Mike. 30 years had passed since Michael began his search for William. He'd gone back to both the Freddy's he'd previously worked at, along with Henry's Pizzeria where the Bite of 87 happened, and there was no trace of his father or Elizabeth. Just when he was about to give up, he saw an ad for a new attraction. It was Fazbear's Fright, a haunted house themed to the long-abandoned Fazbear restaurants. Michael knew this could be his chance. He signed up and was once again given the night security job. Quickly, he ran into Charlie, still possessing the old rotting security puppet even after 30 years. Michael assumed Charlie was also here for unfinished business, so he decided to stay out of her way. For the first few days, there was nothing, until...
You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
After 30 years, Michael came face to face with his father, his decomposing body still trapped inside of the rotting Spring Bonnie suit. It was almost as if the presence of Afton had put the spirits on high alert. After 5 nights, when Michael was sure that the man in the suit was his father, he rigged the wiring to catch fire and set the building ablaze, leaving his father to burn. He escaped, believing he'd finally put his father down, but through sheer will to survive, Afton escaped. He knew what would be waiting for him if he were to die, and he refused to let it happen. Afton still remained. Just 1 year later, Michael caught wind of the grand reopening of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza for a limited time. Immediately, he applied for a job as a franchisee. Despite never coming face to face with his employer, Michael knew who was behind this reopening. It was Henry. He'd returned after decades of guilt and regrets to put an end to everything started by the man who was once his best friend. He left behind recordings instructing Michael to bring in any animatronic that showed up in the back alleyway and lock them inside a labyrinth of air vents beneath the pizzeria. Michael was quickly able to tell what Henry was planning. Before long, the four that Mike and Henry were waiting for arrived. First was Elizabeth, who had been kicked out by the other kids for being too bossy and attempted to rebuild herself. Next was William, whose decrepit body was still locked inside the spring-lock suit. Next were the remains of the Funtime animatronics after Elizabeth left, barely held together by Gabriel, Fritz, Jeremy, and Susie. And finally Charlie. Henry knew his daughter was smarter than the others and wouldn't be fooled so easily, so he built a special animatronic to capture and bring her to the pizzeria. Once all four animatronics were locked inside the labyrinth, Henry and Michael put the building on full lockdown and once again set it ablaze. Over the building's intercom, Henry thanked Michael for the sacrifices he'd made, lamented on what had become of Elizabeth, condemned William to hell for his sins, and apologized to his daughter and the children for being unable to protect them. Michael and Evan passed on together in the fire, the brothers finally making peace with one another. Evan forgave Mike for cutting his life short, and Michael was able to right his father's sins. Henry passed as well, giving his life to bring peace to everyone his old friend hurt.
It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
William, however, wasn't so lucky. He awoke inside a security office, before being suddenly attacked by all the animatronics he'd helped to create over the course of his life. As the robots attacked, he screamed for Mike or Henry or anyone to save him from whatever was happening. But his cries were answered by someone he didn't expect.
We've only just begun. I will never let you leave. I will never let you rest.
Of course. He'd forgotten about her, it had been so long. But now she was back, and she had William right where she wanted him. Cassidy, the one he should not have killed. Afton's unconscious body laid amongst the wreckage as Cassidy filled his head with nightmares of awful torture. As the months passed, William's body remained barely clinging to life as Cassidy tormented him with horrific nightmares every passing moment. The animatronics bit him, ripped him apart, and crawled under his skin as the two souls fought for control over the now useless body. But in her efforts to bring William to justice, Cassidy continued to keep him alive. And until their killer was dead, Charlie, Gabriel, Susie, Fritz, and Jeremy couldn't pass on. They stuck with Cassidy, continuously trying to convince her to give up and pass on to the afterlife with them, but Cassidy refused, and William continued breathing. This went on until Cassidy was visited by some kind of higher being. We don't know much about this mysterious entity, taking the form of a kindly fisherman, but as he and Cassidy talked, she could slowly feel all her pent-up rage and animosity melting away. Leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul. There is nothing else. At these words, Cassidy entered the fisherman's lake, and there waiting for her was Charlie and the others. The 6 spirits finally passed on, disappearing into the afterlife. And with no Cassidy to keep him alive, William Afton finally breathed his last. His body was eventually found in the ruins of the pizzeria, but at that point he was completely unrecognizable. Well, there we have it. That's my interpretation of the Afton era of the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. If this video does well, I'll be back to cover the Mimic era. Thanks for watching, and even if you disagree, I hope you enjoyed it.